The crystal towers of Thesara Prime burned against the night sky. Council leader Thal Oven watched from his command center as another section of the city fell to the Vorthak bombardment. The elegant spires that had stood for thousands of years crumbled like broken glass under the alien weapons. "Sir, the Eastern District has been evacuated," reported his aide, her voice shaking. The young Corvani female clutched her datapad with trembling hands. "But the Vorthak ground forces are advancing faster than we expected." Thalavan nodded grimly. His people were not warriors. For 10,000 years, the Corvani Confederation had known peace. Their 3 star systems had flourished through trade, art, and scientific discovery. Their ships were built for exploration, not combat. Their cities were designed for beauty, not defense. The Vorthak Empire had changed everything in just 6 months. "How many ships do we have left?" Thalavan asked, though he already knew the answer would be terrible. 17 vessels, sir, all of them damaged." Military Coordinator Reshetai stepped forward, his usually pristine uniform torn and stained. "The Vorthak fleet has over 300 ships. We cannot win this fight." Thalavan closed his eyes. The weight of an entire civilization pressed down on his shoulders. 3 worlds, 40 billion souls, all looking to him for salvation he could not provide. "There is one option," Reshetai said quietly. "The Galactic Distress Protocol." Every Corvani in the command center turned to stare at him. The protocol was ancient, established during the founding of the Galactic Council centuries ago. It allowed any member species to broadcast a plea for military aid across known space when facing extinction, but it had never been used. Most species preferred to handle their own problems. "Who would answer?" Thalavan asked. "The Zalith Dominion is too far away. The mechanized hegemony is fighting their own border wars. The other powers." He shook his head. "They will not risk their fleets for us." "Someone might answer," Reshetai said. "It is better than waiting here to die." Another explosion shook the building. Through the great windows, they could see Vorthak, landing craft descending like angry insects. The creatures inside would show no mercy. The Vorthak did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed everything in their path. "Do it," Thalavan said. Reshetai moved to the communication console. His fingers moved across the controls, activating systems that had gathered dust for generations. The massive transmitters deep beneath the city hummed to life, drawing power from the emergency reactors. "Galactic Distress Protocol activated," the computer announced in its calm, artificial voice. "Broadcasting on all emergency frequencies." The message went out across the galaxy at faster-than-light speed. It carried the desperate words of a dying civilization, begging for help from anyone willing to listen. "This is Council Leader Thalavan. Of the Corvani Confederation, our worlds are under attack by the Vorthak Empire. Our defenses have failed. Our people are dying. We invoke the Galactic Distress Protocol and request immediate military assistance. We offer trade agreements, technology, exchange, and permanent alliance to any species that will aid us. Time is running out. Please help us." The message repeated endlessly, transmitted by relay stations across 3 star systems. It reached the core worlds of the galaxy within hours, spreading through space lanes and communication networks like ripples in a pond. Most who received it ignored the call. The Corvani were a minor species, their technology unremarkable, their military non-existent. Why risk ships and lives for strangers who had nothing to offer in return? But in a quiet sector, far from the galactic center, a human patrol ship picked up the signal. Captain Kim Do-hyun was reviewing duty rosters when his communications officer called out, "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal on the emergency. Band." "Put it through," Do-hyun said, setting down his datapad. The bridge of the UES Indomitable was small compared to the massive warships of other species, but it buzzed with efficient activity. His crew of 200 was hand-picked from Earth's best. The Corvani message played through the bridge speakers. Do-hyun listened carefully, his dark eyes focused on the tactical display. The Corvani Confederation was 3 systems away, well outside human territory. "What do we know about these Corvani?" he asked. Communications specialist Choi Yuna pulled up files on her console. "Peaceful traders, sir. Highly advanced in some areas, but they've never had a real military. The Vorthak Empire—" She paused, reading. "They're bad news. Aggressive expansion, slavery, genocide. They've wiped out 6 species in the last 50 years. And now they're going after the Corvani," Tactical Officer Lee Hyunwoo said grimly. "Those poor bastards don't stand a chance." Do-hyun considered his options. Officially, this was not humanity's problem. Earth was still considered a quarantine world by most of the galaxy. Humans were too new, too unknown, too dangerous to be trusted with galactic affairs. Most species preferred to pretend humanity did not exist, but the Corvani had asked for help, and no one else seemed to be answering. "Chief Engineer Park Min-seo, how are our engines?" "Running perfectly, sir," came the reply from engineering. "We can make the jump to Corvani space in 6 hours." "Sir," Lee Hyunwoo said carefully, "this could be seen as an act of war against the Vorthak Empire. Earth Command might not approve." Do-hyun smiled grimly. "Earth Command sent us out here to patrol and protect human interests. I'd say preventing genocide qualifies." He turned to his crew. "Besides, someone called for help. We're going to answer." The bridge crew exchanged glances. They had served with Captain Do-hyun for 3 years, through pirate raids and border disputes. They trusted his judgment completely. "Set course for Thesara Prime, maximum speed," Do-hyun ordered. "Send a reply to the Corvani. Tell them help is coming." "What should we tell them about our capabilities?" Choi Yuna asked. "Tell them we're a patrol vessel with 200 crew members. Keep it simple." As the Indomitable's engines powered up, for the jump to hyperspace, none of the crew realized they were about to change the course of galactic history. To them, this was just another mission. They had no idea that the rest of the galaxy considered humans to be nightmares made real, creatures from a world so hostile that it bred perfect killers. They were simply going to help someone who had asked for aid. Back on Thesara Prime, the Corvani received the reply with mixed emotions. Help was coming, but it was just one small ship. What could 200 beings do against the might of the Vorthak Empire? They were about to find out exactly what humans were capable of. The Vorthak continued their advance, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had conquered dozens of worlds using the same tactics: massive fleets, brutal ground assaults, and absolute ruthlessness. No species had ever stood against them for long, but they had never faced humans before. In 6 hours, the galaxy would begin to understand why Earth had been quarantined. Not because humans were too primitive for galactic civilization, but because they were too dangerous. They came from a world that had forged them in fire and blood, where only the strongest and smartest survived. The Corvani had asked for aid, thinking they would receive help from another civilized species. Instead, they had awakened something that the galaxy had tried very hard to keep sleeping. They were about to be backed by the most relentless Deathworlders in known space, and the Vorthak Empire was about to learn why that was a very bad thing for them. The UES Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Thesara system with barely a whisper. Captain Kim Do-hyun stood on his bridge, studying the tactical display that showed the carnage ahead. Debris fields marked where Corvani ships had died. Burning cities glowed like angry stars on the planet's night side. "Vorthak fleet composition, Mr. Lee?" Do-hyun asked his tactical officer. Lee Hyun-woo's fingers moved across his console. 230 vessels, sir. Mostly heavy cruisers and troop transports. They're maintaining a loose blockade formation around the planet. Sloppy, Chief Engineer Park Min-seo commented from her station. No proper screening elements, no overlapping fields of fire. It's like they've never fought anyone who could fight. Back! They probably haven't, communications specialist Choi Yuna said. According to the database, most species they've attacked were peaceful traders like the Corvani. Do-hyun nodded. The Vortak relied on overwhelming force and terror tactics. It was effective against civilized worlds that had never known real war. But humans came from Earth, where war was as natural as breathing. Take us in, but keep us clear of their sensor nets, he ordered. Let's see what we're dealing with before we announce ourselves. The Indomitable moved through the system like a ghost, her advanced stealth systems hiding her from Vorthak sensors. The human ship was smaller than most warships, built for speed and efficiency rather than raw firepower. To outside observers, she looked almost fragile. They would learn how wrong they were soon enough. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet, Choi Yuna reported. It's the Corvani leadership. Put them through. The main screen flickered to life, showing the command center on Thesara Prime. Council leader Thalavan appeared, his tall, thin form hunched with exhaustion. His pale blue skin had a gray tinge that spoke of stress and fear. Behind him, other Corvani moved with desperate efficiency. This is Council leader Thalavan, the alien said, his voice carrying a musical quality despite his obvious fatigue. Are you the ship that responded to our distress call? Captain Kim Do-hyun, UES Indomitable, Do-hyun replied formally. We received your request for aid. What's your current situation? Relief flooded Thalavan's features. Captain, thank the stars you came. The Vorthak have landed ground forces in 12 cities. Our orbital defenses are gone. We have perhaps 2 days before they overrun our capital. Do-hyun studied the Corvani leader. The alien was tall and graceful, with long fingers and large eyes that spoke of intelligence and peace. Everything about him suggested a being who had never known violence, never had to make the hard choices that war demanded. We'll need to coordinate with your remaining forces, Do-hyun said. Can you provide us with tactical data on Vorthak positions and capabilities? Of course, but Thalavan hesitated. Captain, with respect, you have only one ship, the Vorthak. Fleet numbers in the hundreds. How can you possibly help us? Behind Do-hyun, several crew members exchanged glances. Tactical Officer Lee Hyun-woo smiled grimly. Chief Engineer Park Min-seo chuckled softly. They had heard this question before, usually right before demonstrating why humanity had survived 10,000 years of constant warfare on the most dangerous planet in known space. Leave that to us, Do-hyun said simply. We'll need to send down a diplomatic team to coordinate our efforts. Are your landing facilities secure? The main spaceport is still under our control, Military Coordinator Reshatai said, stepping into view. But I must warn you, the Vorthak have been targeting any ships that attempt to land. Understood. We'll take precautions. After the communication ended, Do-hyun turned to his senior staff. Recommendations? Standard first contact protocol, suggested linguist Han Ji-woo. Small team, minimal weapons, maximum diplomacy. I disagree, said cultural attaché Song Mina. These people are dying. They need to see that we're taking this seriously. Send a full diplomatic mission with military advisors. Both approaches have merit, Do-hyun decided. Han, you'll lead the diplomatic team. Song, you'll handle cultural liaison. I want Intelligence Officer Lim Dong-wook to assess their capabilities and Tactical Specialist Bai Soo-hyun to evaluate the Vorthak threat. 2 hours later, a human shuttle descended through Thesara Prime's atmosphere. The small craft moved with precise efficiency, its pilot dodging Vorthak patrol ships with casual skill that made the watching Corvani nervous. No species they knew flew with such aggressive confidence. The shuttle landed at the spaceport under cover of the remaining Corvani defensive batteries. As the cargo ramp lowered, Council leader Thalavan and his advisors waited with a mixture of hope and curiosity. The humans who emerged were not what they expected. Linguist Han Ji-woo was the first down the ramp, a compact woman with dark hair. and alert eyes that seemed to catalog everything around her. Behind her came cultural attaché Song Mina, taller and more formal, carrying herself with military precision despite her diplomatic role. But it was the other humans that made the Corvani step back in surprise. Intelligence Officer Lim Dong-wook moved like a predator, his eyes constantly scanning for threats that existed only in his trained imagination. Tactical Specialist Bae Soo-hyun walked with the easy confidence of someone who had never met a problem that couldn't be solved with proper application of force. All of them carried themselves with a casual alertness that the Corvani had never seen before. Even their diplomatic team looked like soldiers. Council Leader Thal Aven, Han Ji-woo said, stepping forward with a slight bow. I'm Han Ji-woo, representing Captain Do-hyun and the human delegation. We're here to help. Welcome to Thesara Prime, Thal Aven replied, trying to hide his surprise at the humans' appearance. They were shorter than Corvani, but much more solidly built. Their movements suggested strength and endurance that seemed almost excessive for intelligent beings. We appreciate you coming so far to aid us, he continued. Though I must confess, we know very little about your species. Humans, you said? That's correct, Song Mina replied smoothly. We're from a world called Earth, in what you probably know as the quarantine sector. Several Corvani exchanged worried glances. The quarantine sector was legendary throughout the galaxy as a region too dangerous for civilized exploration. Stories spoke of worlds where the very atmosphere was poison, where gravity crushed unwary visitors, where evolution had produced creatures of unimaginable ferocity. The quarantine sector? Military Coordinator Reshtai asked carefully. Forgive me, but our records suggest that region is uninhabitable. Lim Dong-wook laughed, a sound that made several Corvani step backward. Uninhabitable is relative. Earth's a nice place once you get used to it. Good gravity, decent weather, plenty of food if you know how to hunt it. Hunt it? Thal Aven repeated faintly. Most of our food tries to kill us before we eat it, Bae Soo-hyun explained helpfully. Makes for interesting meals. The humans seemed to find this amusing. The Corvani found it terrifying. Perhaps we should focus on the current situation, Han. Ji-woo said diplomatically. We need to understand the Vorthak capabilities and your remaining resources. As they moved toward the command center, the Corvani couldn't help but notice how the humans walked. They moved with perfect balance, their heads constantly turning to scan for threats, their hands never far from their weapons. Even their diplomatic team looked ready for war. Tell us about the Vorthak ground forces, Song Mina requested as they entered the building. They're savage, Reshtai said with a shudder. They take no prisoners, show no mercy. Their soldiers are bred for war, raised from birth to kill without hesitation. Sounds familiar, Bae Soo-hyun muttered, earning sharp looks from her companions. What she means, Han Ji-woo said quickly, is that we understand the challenge. On Earth, we've dealt with similar threats. Similar threats? Thal Aven asked. Each other mostly, Lim Dong-wook said casually. Humans have been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. We're pretty good at it by now. The Corvani stared at them in shocked silence. A species that fought constant wars. On their own world? What kind of creatures had they summoned to their aid? They were about to find out exactly what 10,000 years of warfare had produced, and the Vorthak Empire was about to learn why the galaxy had quarantined the sector containing Earth. It wasn't to protect the rest of the galaxy from humans. It was to protect humans from themselves until they were ready to face the wider universe. That time had come. The first sign that humans were different came in the medical bay. Dr. Jung Seol-gi walked through the Corvani hospital with calm efficiency, her medical kit slung over one shoulder. The wounded filled every available space, their pale blue skin marked with burns and trauma from Vorthak weapons. The local medics moved between patients with careful, precise movements. This one needs immediate surgery, the lead Corvani medic, Veltar, said urgently. He gestured to a patient whose chest had been crushed by falling debris. But we cannot operate in these conditions. The power fluctuations, the lack of sterile environment. Dr. Jung examined the patient quickly, her hands moving with practiced skill. "I can do it here," she said simply. "Here." Veltar stared at her in shock. "But the radiation from the damaged power core, the electromagnetic interference. It would kill most species to work in these conditions." "It's not that bad," Dr. Jung replied, already preparing her instruments. "I've performed surgery in worse places. During the Mumbai crisis, I operated for 16 hours straight while the building was under artillery fire. The radiation here is maybe a tenth of what we dealt with during the Chernobyl incident training." Veltar watched in amazement as the human doctor worked. The electromagnetic fields that made his own instruments useless didn't seem to affect her equipment. The radiation that would have given him severe poisoning in minutes barely registered on her monitors. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "Earth is a tough place," Dr. Jung said, not looking up from her work. "We adapt or we die. Most of us choose to adapt." Meanwhile, in the engineering section, Chief Engineer Park Min-seo was having a similar conversation with the Corvani technical team. She stood in the center of their main power plant, completely unbothered by the radiation and heat that forced the locals to work in protective suits. "You want to route the auxiliary power through the damaged conduits?" Chief Engineer Nalseth asked in disbelief. "The electromagnetic discharge alone would fry any normal being's nervous system." "Define normal," Park Min-seo said with a grin. "Where I come from, we work in conditions that would cook most species. This is actually pretty comfortable." She began making modifications to their power grid with casual efficiency, her bare hands working on systems that the Corvani could only approach with heavy protective gear. To her, the crackling energy and dangerous radiation were just another day at the office. "On Earth," she explained as she worked, "our technology had to be reliable in extreme conditions. Volcanic activity, electromagnetic storms, radiation zones, toxic atmospheres. We build things to work anywhere." The Corvani engineers watched in stunned silence as she rewired their entire power grid in less than an hour, creating redundancies and safeguards that their own specialists would have needed days to implement. The real revelation came that evening during the cultural exchange session that Han Ji-woo had organized. The Corvani leadership gathered in the main conference room, eager to learn more about their mysterious allies. "Tell us about your homeworld," Council Leader Thal Oven requested politely. "We know so little about Earth." Communications Specialist Choi Yuna, who had joined the ground team, smiled warmly. "Earth is beautiful," she began. "We have vast oceans, high mountains, deep forests. The weather changes with the seasons." "It sounds peaceful," Thalaven said hopefully. "Well," Choi Yuna continued, "we do have a few challenges. The storms can get pretty intense. Hurricane winds over 300 kilometers per hour. Tornadoes that can level cities, blizzards that bury entire regions under meters of snow." The Corvani stared at her. "You live through storms like that?" "Oh, that's just weather," she replied cheerfully. "Then there are the earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, droughts, floods, forest fires that can burn for months." "But surely your technology protects you from these disasters?" Military Coordinator Reshitai asked weakly. "Sometimes," Choi Yuna admitted. "But mostly we just deal with them. Humans are pretty good at surviving things that should kill us. We've been doing it for millions of years." Intelligence Officer Lim Dongwook leaned forward. "Would you like to hear about our history?" The Corvani nodded eagerly, hoping for stories of peaceful development and scientific advancement. "Well," Lim began, "we started as hunter-gatherers on the African savanna. Spent a few 100,000 years learning to track and kill creatures much larger and stronger than ourselves. Then we had the Ice Ages." "Ice Ages?" Thalaven interrupted. "Our planet gets cold sometimes. Really cold. Glaciers covering half. The continent's most life dying out, only the strongest and smartest surviving. We went through several of those. The Corvani looked increasingly uncomfortable. After that came the agricultural revolution, Lim continued. We learned to farm, which was great until the plague started. Diseases that killed millions at a time. Black Death, Spanish flu, dozens of others. Really helped with natural selection. Natural selection? Veltar asked faintly. Survival of the fittest. Tactical specialist Bae Soo-hyun explained helpfully. The weak die, the strong live to reproduce. It's how evolution works on Earth. Competition makes us stronger. But what about peace? Thalhaven asked desperately. Surely you had periods of peace and cooperation. Oh, sure, Lim said. Between wars. We've been fighting each other almost continuously for our entire recorded history. Tribal conflicts, religious wars, resource disputes, territorial expansion, ideological differences. If there's a reason to fight, humans have probably fought over it. You fight your own species? Reshitai was horrified. All the time, Bae Soo-hyun confirmed. It's how we test new weapons and tactics. Nothing teaches you about war like actually fighting one. But that's... Thalhaven struggled for words. That's barbaric. It's effective, Choi Yuna said mildly. By the time we reached the stars, humans had already survived every challenge our world could throw at us. Wars, plagues, natural disasters, resource shortages, climate changes. We adapted to all of it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Corvani had called for help from a species that treated constant warfare as normal, that had evolved on a world so hostile it would kill most galactic citizens in minutes. This is why your sector is quarantined, Thalhaven said slowly. Not because you're primitive, but because you're dangerous, Lim finished. The Galactic Council figured it was safer to leave us alone until we decided to come out on our own. And you decided to come help us, Reshtai said wonderingly. You asked for aid, Dr. Jung said simply, having joined them after finishing her surgeries. That's what civilized beings do. They help those who ask for help. Civilized? Thalhaven laughed bitterly. We thought we were civilized. We've never known war, never faced real hardship. We build beautiful cities and create art and explore the stars in peace. But when real predators came, we fell apart in months. You're not predators, Park Min-seo said firmly. You're exactly what intelligent beings should be. Peaceful, creative, cooperative. You've built something beautiful here. But we're weak, Veltar said. You're not weak, Bae Soo-hyun corrected. You're just not designed for war. That's actually a good thing. The galaxy needs species like yours to remind the rest of us what we're fighting for. The problem, Lim said thoughtfully, is that the galaxy also produces species like the Vorthak. Aggressive, expansionist, destructive. Someone has to deal with them. And that's where we come in, Choi Yuna said with a gentle smile. Humans are very good at dealing with things that need to be stopped. The Corvani looked around the table at their human allies. These beings came from a world that would kill them in minutes, had survived challenges that would destroy entire civilizations, and had spent their entire history learning how to fight and survive. And they had come across the galaxy to help strangers who had simply asked for aid. For the first time since the Vorthak invasion began, Thalhaven felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. Commander Jang Tae-hyun stood in the ruins of what had once been a beautiful Corvani garden, watching his human marines train the local militia. The contrast was striking and brutal. The Corvani moved with graceful precision, their tall, elegant forms perfect for their peaceful world. But when Sergeant Oh Sung-min barked orders, they struggled to keep up with training exercises that human children could complete easily. Again! Oh called out as another group of Corvani recruits collapsed from exhaustion. Your lives depend on being able to move fast and hit hard. The Vorthak won't wait for you to catch your breath. One of the younger Corvani, a female named Silandra pushed herself up from the ground with shaking arms. "Sergeant, we cannot keep up with human standards. Our bodies are not built for this kind of stress." "Then we'll build you up," O replied firmly but not unkindly. "Humans weren't born ready for war. We learned. You can learn too." Commander Jang watched approvingly. His Marines understood something that the Corvani were just beginning to grasp. War wasn't about being the strongest or fastest. It was about being willing to push beyond your limits when everything depended on it. "Sir," came a voice behind him. Lieutenant Commander Nam Jiho approached, his pilot's helmet tucked under one arm. "Captain Do-hyun wants to see you. The Vorthak are moving." In the tactical center that the humans had quickly established, Captain Kim Do-hyun stood before a holographic display showing the Vorthak fleet positions. The enemy ships moved in loose formations, confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. "They're planning a final assault," Intelligence Officer Lim Dong-wook reported. "Massive bombardment followed by ground invasion. They want to finish this in the next 48 hours. "How many ships?" Do-hyun asked. 230, same as before. They haven't called for reinforcements because they don't think they need them." Tactical Officer Lee Hyun-woo pulled up additional data. "Their formation is still sloppy. No proper screening, no coordinated defense patterns. They're fighting like a mob, not a military force." "Good," Do-hyun said quietly. "That makes this easier." The Corvani leadership, gathered around the tactical display, looked confused. "Easier?" Council Leader Thalaven asked. "Captain, they outnumber you more than 200 to 1. "Numbers aren't everything," Chief Engineer Park Min-seo said from her position at the engineering station. "The Indomitable might be smaller. Then there's ships, but she's built to Earth standards. We can take damage that would cripple most vessels and keep fighting." "But even so," Military Coordinator Reshtai protested, "one ship against 200. "Who said anything about ship-to-ship combat?" Lieutenant Commander Nam Jiho asked with a predatory smile. "We're not going to play by their rules." Captain Do-hyun turned to his senior staff. "Recommendations?" "Classic pack tactics," Commander Jang suggested immediately. "Hit fast, hit hard, disappear before they can respond. Make them chase us into prepared positions. I can rig their sensors to see ghosts," Chief Engineer Park Min-seo added. "A few sensor drones programmed with the right signatures will make them think we have a full fleet." "And I can coordinate with our ground teams to create maximum chaos," Intelligence Officer Lim Dong-wook said. "The Vorthak rely on fear and brutality. When their enemies start fighting back effectively, they panic." Do-hyun nodded. "Do it. We have 6 hours before they begin their assault." What followed was a masterclass in human military thinking. The Corvani watched in amazement as the humans transformed their defensive strategy from a desperate last stand into an aggressive counterattack. Nam Jiho and his pilots prepared their fighters for something the Vorthak had never encountered. Space superiority missions flown by beings who had learned aerial combat in Earth's hostile skies. Their small, fast ships were designed for agility and precision, not the brute force approach favored by most galactic navies. On the ground, Sergeant Oh Sung-min and his teams began preparing the kind of reception that had made Earth's cities unconquerable throughout human history. They turned rubble into fortified positions, created kill zones in areas the Vorthak would need to cross, and established supply lines that could operate under the most extreme conditions. Medical teams, under Dr. Jung Seulgi, set up aid stations that could function even under direct fire. In human military doctrine, wounded soldiers were returned to combat as quickly as possible. The Corvani were amazed to see humans planning to treat injuries that would be fatal to most species. "This is insane," Veltar muttered as he watched. Human medics preparing surgical equipment designed to work in combat zones. "You plan to perform surgery while being shot at?" "It's been done before," Dr. Jung replied calmly. During the siege of Stalingrad, battlefield surgeons operated for days while the building was under constant bombardment. During the Mars colony wars, medics treated patients in vacuum suits while under fire from orbital weapons. Your species fights wars in space? Thalavan asked weakly. Where else would we fight them? Captain Yoon Heron asked as she directed the placement of defensive charges. Once we got off Earth, we had to learn how to fight in every environment the galaxy could throw at us. The Vorthak assault began exactly on schedule. Their fleet moved into bombardment position, preparing to reduce the Corvani capital to rubble before landing their ground forces. They never saw the human fighters coming. Nam Jiho led his squadron through an approach vector that would have been suicidal for any other species. They used the planet's magnetic field to mask their engine signatures, skimmed the upper atmosphere at speeds that created plasma trails, and struck the Vorthak fleet from an angle that their sensors hadn't been programmed to monitor. The first 6 Vorthak ships died before they knew they were under attack. Human weapons, designed for the close-quarters combat that Earth's crowded skies demanded, tore through armor that had been built to withstand the long-range bombardments typical of galactic warfare. What was that? Warlord Gexmore demanded, from his command ship. Where did those fighters come from? Unknown vessels, sir, his tactical officer reported. Small, fast, heavily armed. They're not like anything in our databases. Find them and destroy them. But the human fighters had already vanished, diving back toward the planet to prepare for their next strike. They left behind burning wreckage and a Vorthak fleet that was suddenly much less confident about its overwhelming superiority. On the ground, the Vorthak landing forces encountered something even more disturbing. The Corvani cities that should have been easy to conquer had been transformed into death traps by human engineers who understood urban warfare better than any species in the galaxy. Corporal Shin Woo-young led a mixed team of humans and Corvani through the ruins of the Eastern District, turning the Vorthak invasion into a nightmare of close-quarters combat. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before they could respond. They're like ghosts, one surviving Vorthak soldier reported. The humans move through the ruins like they were born there, and the Corvani who fight with them, they're different now. Dangerous. The transformation of the Corvani militia was perhaps the most remarkable change of all. Under human training and leadership, the peaceful aliens had discovered reserves of courage and determination they never knew they possessed. They still couldn't match human physical capabilities, but they had learned to fight with human tactics and human persistence. Do not let them retreat, Sergeant O instructed his mixed squad as they prepared for another engagement. In human military doctrine, a retreating enemy is a regrouping enemy. We finish this here and now. The Corvani soldiers nodded grimly. They had learned that humans didn't just fight to win battles, they fought to end wars permanently. By the end of the first day, the Vorthak invasion had stalled completely. Their fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that refused to fight by conventional rules, and their ground forces were trapped in urban combat against opponents who treated warfare like a science. Warlord Gexmore stared at the tactical displays showing his losses and felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. In one day, these unknown humans had cost him more ships than he had lost in the previous 5 years of conquest, and they were just getting started. Warlord Gexmore had conquered 14 star systems in his career. He had reduced entire species to slavery, turned thriving worlds into ash and bone. No enemy had ever stood against the Vorthak Empire for more than a few months. But after 3 days of fighting the humans, he was ready to retreat. Sir, his tactical officer reported with barely concealed panic. We've lost 67 ships. The humans are systematically destroying our fleet. How? Gexmore demanded. They have 1 ship. 1! They fight like nothing we've ever encountered, came the reply. They attack from impossible angles, use weapons that shouldn't exist, and coordinate their strikes with precision that defies belief. Through the bridge windows, Gexmore could see the latest human attack in progress. Lieutenant Commander Nam Jiho's fighters had appeared from behind the planet's moon, used the gravity well to slingshot themselves past Vorthak defenses, and were now systematically crippling the Empire's largest ships with surgical strikes. They target our engines first, the tactical officer continued, leaving us unable to maneuver. Then they destroy our weapons. Finally, they board us and take prisoners. Prisoners? Gexmore snarled. The Vorthak do not surrender. Tell that to the 300 soldiers they captured yesterday. The humans treat them according to something they call the Geneva Convention. They provide medical care, proper food, protection from abuse. Gexmore stared at his subordinate in disbelief. They show mercy to their enemies? It gets worse, sir. The prisoners they've taken are starting to talk. Not under torture, but because the humans actually listen to their concerns and treat them with respect. Some of our own soldiers are asking to defect. This was beyond Gexmore's comprehension. The Vorthak Empire maintained discipline through fear and brutality. The idea that enemies could be converted through kindness was alien to everything he understood about warfare. Prepare the fleet for withdrawal, he ordered finally. We'll regroup at the Nexus station and return with reinforcements. But Captain, Kim Do-yun had anticipated this decision. Sir, Communications Specialist Choi Yuna reported, the Vorthak fleet is moving to retreat positions. I was wondering when they'd try that, Do-hyun said calmly. Mr. Lee, are our pursuit plans ready? Tactical Officer Lee Hyun-woo smiled grimly. All ships tagged with tracking devices, sir. Navigation Officer Lee Soo-jin has plotted their most likely escape routes. Chief Engineer Park Min-seo has the engines ready for extended pursuit. The Corvani leadership, monitoring the conversation from their command center, looked confused. Pursuit? Council Leader Thalavan asked. But they're leaving. Isn't that what we wanted? No, Intelligence Officer Lim Dong-wook said firmly. Letting them retreat means they'll regroup and attack someone else. Human military doctrine is clear. Threats are eliminated, not just repelled. But they're fleeing, Military Coordinator Reshtai protested. Surely showing mercy would be a death sentence for their next victims, Commander Jang Tae-hyun interrupted. The Vorthak have destroyed 6 species that we know of. How many more will die if we let them escape to rebuild their forces? The Corvani had no answer for that. Their peaceful nature made it difficult to understand the cold logic of human warfare. Sometimes the kindest thing you could do was to be utterly ruthless with those who threatened innocent lives. Besides, Chief Engineer Park Min-seo added with a predatory grin, they started this fight. Human tradition says we get to finish it. The Indomitable detached from Thesara Prime's orbital defenses and began pursuing the fleeing Vorthak fleet. What followed was a masterpiece of human persistence hunting. The same instincts that had allowed early humans to track prey across vast distances translated into interstellar warfare. Navigation Officer Lee Soo-jin plotted pursuit courses through hyperspace routes that would have challenged the best pilots in the galaxy. The Indomitable traveled through unstable space lanes, navigated asteroid fields, and used gravitational anomalies that would have destroyed most ships. The Vorthak are trying to lose us in the Crescent Nebula, she reported. High radiation, electromagnetic interference, gravity fluctuations that would crush most vessels. Sounds like home, Dr. Young Sulgi commented from the medical bay, where she was treating wounded Vorthak prisoners with the same care she gave human casualties. Take us in, Captain Do-hyun ordered. The Indomitable was built to operate in conditions that would kill other ships. The human vessel plunged into the nebula without hesitation. Her advanced shielding, designed to protect against Earth's hostile radiation environment, easily handled the energies that forced most galactic ships to detour around such hazards. Inside the nebula, the Vorthak fleet found themselves being hunted by an enemy that treated the hostile environment as just another battlefield. Human sensors, evolved from technology that had to work in Earth's electromagnetically active atmosphere, easily tracked ships that thought they were hidden. One by one, the Vorthak vessels fell behind as the humans systematically disabled their engines and captured their crews. Engineering teams under Chief Petty Officer Cho Minho performed repairs and modifications under conditions that would have been instantly fatal to most species. How do they keep fighting in this environment? Gexmore demanded as another of his ships sent a distress signal. The radiation alone should have killed their crew by now. Sir, his science officer said hesitantly, according to our database, humans evolved on a world where this level of radiation is considered normal background levels. That's impossible. Their homeworld orbits a variable star, sir. Radiation. Storms that would sterilize most planets are regular weather events for them. They've also survived multiple asteroid impacts, volcanic periods that would create global extinction events, and ice ages that covered most of their planet in glaciers. Gexmore stared at the tactical display showing his fleet being systematically dismantled by a single human ship. What kind of monsters are these humans? The kind that survive anything, came the reply, and apparently the kind that never give up once they've decided you're a threat. The pursuit continued across 3 star systems. At each stop, local species watched in amazement as a small human vessel chased down and captured ships 10 times its size. Word began to spread through the galaxy about the relentless hunters from the quarantine sector. At Nexus Station, the Vorthak Empire's largest military base, Gexmore made his final stand. He had gathered every available ship, called in favors from allied species, and prepared defenses that had never been breached. The humans arrived 18 hours later. Captain Do-hyun stood on his bridge, studying the massive space station and its defensive fleet. Impressive, he said calmly. Mr. Lee, analysis? 400 ships, sir. Fixed defensive positions, overlapping fields of fire, mined approaches. Someone's been studying human tactics. Good for them, Commander Park Jun-soo said from his position at the tactical station. It might make this interesting. Sir? Dr. Seo Jihye reported from the medical bay. The Vorthak prisoners are requesting to speak with you. Put them through. The main screen showed the leader of the captured Vorthak soldiers, a scarred veteran named Kreshitan. Captain Do-hyun, he said formally, I have a message from my comrades still with the fleet. I'm listening. They want to surrender. Not just the ships at the station, but the entire empire. They've seen what humans can do, and they don't want to fight you anymore. Do-hyun considered this. And Warlord Gexmore? Refuses to surrender. He says he'd rather die fighting than live under human rule. Then he'll get his wish, Do-hyun said simply. But his people don't have to die with him. The final battle for Nexus Station lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Vorthak Empire had ceased to exist as a military force. Warlord Gexmore was dead, his flagship destroyed when he refused to surrender, but most of his fleet had chosen to live. The galaxy would never be the same. The surrender ceremony took place aboard the UES Indomitable in the same small conference room where Captain Kim Do-hyun had planned the campaign that brought down the Vorthak Empire. The contrast between the modest human vessel and the massive space station, visible through the windows, spoke volumes about the galaxy's new reality. General Thexmar, the highest-ranking Vorthak officer to survive the final battle, stood before the human captain with something approaching respect in his eyes. Behind him, a dozen other Vorthak commanders waited nervously. Captain Do-hyun, Thexmar said formally, the remaining forces of the Vorthak Empire surrender unconditionally to human authority. Accepted, Do-hyun replied simply. But not to human authority. You're surrendering to the principles of civilized behavior. We're not here to build an empire. Council leader Thala Avan, present as a witness along with representatives from 6 other species, leaned forward with interest. In the weeks since the humans had arrived, delegations from across the galaxy had come to witness the end of the Vorthak threat. What are your terms? Thexmar asked. Diplomatic Officer Ryu Jamin stepped forward with a datapad. Complete demilitarization of all Vorthak forces. Reparations to every species you've attacked to be paid through labor and resources. Integration into a mutual defense pact that will prevent future aggression. And if we refuse, then you'll deal with the consequences of your actions, Commander Jang Tae-hyun said quietly. But we'd prefer you choose the path that leads to peace. Thexmar looked around the room at the mixed group of humans and aliens. 3 weeks ago, he had been part of an empire that controlled dozens of star systems through fear and violence. Now he stood defeated aboard a ship smaller than his personal transport, surrounded by beings who had proven that raw aggression was no match for organized competence. "We accept," he said finally. "Good," Captain Do-hyun said. "Ambassador Yang So-yeon will work with your people to establish transitional governments. Dr. Jung Seol-gi will coordinate medical aid for worlds damaged in your campaigns. Chief Engineer Park Min-seo will help rebuild infrastructure." "You're going to help us?" Thexmar asked in surprise. "That's what civilized beings do," Cultural Advisor Im Subin explained. "We fight to protect innocent lives, not to create more suffering." As the formal surrender documents were signed, Thal'aven found himself amazed once again by human behavior. These beings had just dismantled an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for decades, and their first instinct was to help rebuild rather than exploit their victory. "Captain," he said when the ceremony concluded, "the Corvani Confederation would be honored to offer humanity full membership in our alliance." "Thank you," Do-hyun replied. "But we have a different proposal." He activated a holographic display showing the local region of the galaxy. "The Terran Protectorate, a voluntary alliance where species can request human protection in exchange for friendship and mutual cooperation. No tribute, no imperial control, just mutual defense and shared prosperity." "You're offering to protect the entire galaxy?" asked Ambassador Velnara from the Hegemony Worlds. "We're offering to protect anyone who asks for protection and agrees to follow basic rules about not attacking their neighbors," Ambassador Yang So-yeon clarified. "Think of it as a neighborhood watch program, with the most dangerous species in the galaxy as the watchguards," Thexmar muttered. "Dangerous to those who threaten innocent people," Commander Jang corrected. "Protective of those who just want to live in peace." Over the following days, delegations from dozens of species arrived to witness the signing of the Terran Protectorate Charter. The document was surprisingly simple. Members agreed not to attack each other, to settle disputes through negotiation, and to request human mediation when problems arose. In exchange, humanity would defend them against external threats and provide assistance during natural disasters or other emergencies. "It's too good to be true," complained Ambassador Hexalon from the rigid hierarchy. "What do humans really want from this arrangement?" "To go home," Captain Do-hyun said honestly. "My crew has been away from Earth for 8 months. We have families, friends, lives that don't involve fighting wars. We'd much rather spend our time exploring, learning, building things instead of breaking them." "But you're so good at warfare," Thal'aven said wonderingly. "We're good at a lot of things," Chief Engineer Park Min-seo replied. "We just happen to be really good at fighting when we have to. Given a choice, most humans would rather create than destroy." "Then why are you offering to be the galaxy's protectors?" pressed Velnara. Lieutenant Commander Nam Ji-ho, recently promoted after his performance in the Vorthak campaign, answered that one. "Because somebody has to be. The galaxy produces species like the Vorthak every few centuries. If civilized beings don't deal with them, they'll just keep destroying innocent lives. And humans are the best qualified to handle that kind of threat," added Intelligence Officer Lim Dong-wook. "We understand violence because we've lived with it all our lives. But we also understand why violence should be controlled and limited." As the weeks passed and the Protectorate took shape, the galaxy began to understand the profound change that had occurred. For the first time in recorded history, a truly powerful species had chosen to use their strength to protect, rather than conquer. The Vorthak territories were gradually integrated into the Protectorate under human supervision. Former slave worlds were freed and given aid to rebuild. Aggressive empires across the galaxy suddenly found themselves facing a choice: reform their behavior or face the same fate as the Vorthak. Most chose reform. The final scene played out 6 months later, as the UES Indomitable prepared to return to Earth. Captain Do-hyun stood in the same conference room where the Vorthak surrender had taken place, saying goodbye to the friends they were leaving behind. "Will you return if we need you?" Thalavin asked. "Someone will," Do-hyun assured him. "The Protectorate is setting up permanent stations throughout this sector. Ambassador Yang will coordinate response teams for emergencies. And if another empire like the Vorthak arises, then you call for help and humans will answer," Commander Jang said simply. "That's what pack members do for each other." Dr. Jung Sulgi smiled at the assembled aliens. "Besides, you won't be helpless anymore. We've trained your people, shared our technology, taught you how to defend yourselves. The next time someone threatens the peace, you'll be ready to stand. With us." Sergeant Oh Sungmin nodded approvingly. The Corvani militia had come far from their first stumbling attempts at military training. They would never be human-level warriors, but they had learned human persistence and determination. That would be enough. "Captain," Thexmar said quietly, approaching from where he had been standing with other former Vorthak officers. "I have a question." "What is it, General?" Do-hyun asked. The human had insisted on using Thexmar's new rank in the Protectorate Defense Force rather than treating him as a defeated enemy. "Why did you show us mercy?" "My people have done terrible things. We destroyed entire civilizations, enslaved millions, showed no compassion to our enemies. Yet you treat us with respect and offer us a chance to rebuild." Captain Do-hyun was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Around them, the mixed group of humans and aliens waited to hear his response. "Because that's who we choose to be," he said finally. "Humans have done terrible things too, General. We fought wars that killed millions, destroyed cities, enslaved our own species. We understand what it means to be capable of great evil. But we also understand what it means to choose to be better," added Dr. Jung. "Every human generation has had to decide whether to repeat the mistakes of the past or try to build something better. The galaxy is full of species that could become what the Vorthak were," Intelligence Officer Lim said thoughtfully. "Aggression and competition are natural survival traits. But so are cooperation and compassion. We choose which traits to encourage." Thexmar nodded slowly. "And by showing mercy to enemies, you encourage others to surrender rather than fight to the death." "Smart and practical," Commander Jang agreed. "Wars end faster when the losing side knows they'll be treated fairly." As the farewells continued, Ambassador Yang briefed the assembled delegates on the Protectorate's long-term plans. Human patrol fleets would maintain regular routes through member systems. Emergency response teams would be stationed at key points throughout the sector. Most importantly, a communication network would ensure that no member world would ever again face extinction alone. "What happens when humanity encounters other aggressive empires?" asked Ambassador Velnara. "Surely the Vorthak were not unique in the galaxy." "Then we'll deal with them the same way," Captain Do-hyun said simply. "Offer them the chance to join civilized society. If they refuse, we'll make sure they can't hurt innocent people. And if they're too powerful? If humanity faces an enemy you cannot defeat?" The humans in the room exchanged glances. It was communications specialist Choi Yuna who answered. "Then we'll fight anyway," she said matter-of-factly. "That's what humans do. We don't give up just because the odds are bad. Even if it means your own destruction,